And then we can convert kilograms to pounds. So in the first step, we're going to only convert the numerator to the appropriate unit. So when we finish with the first step, we're actually going to have pounds per centimeter cubed. And then the second step, we're going to focus on the denominator. So we want to convert centimeters cubed to feet cubed. Now here, no unit, no conversion factor was given, so you're welcome to choose any one you want, but we got to go from centimeters cubed to feet cubed. And the most common conversion between centimeters to inches is that, or excuse me, the most common conversion factor we know with centimeters is centimeters to inches. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. And once we have inches, then we know that 1 foot is 12 inches. However, we need to note that we're converting the cubed units of centimeter and feet. But in our conversion factors here, these are not cubed units. So we need to cube these to get the cubed units of each. Now, if 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters is exact, the cubed of that is also exact. So we get 1 inch cubed equals second. 6.387, or excuse me, 16.38706 centimeters cubed. And if you don't have the cube option on your calculator, you can just multiply the number 3 times and you'll get the cubed. So 1 foot cubed is taking 12 cubed. This is 1728 inches cubed. So now we have the conversion factors for the cubed units. We have the conversion factors. Actually, no, we need to know how many grams in a kilogram. So there are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. So now we have all the conversion factors we need to convert gram per centimeter cubed to pounds per foot cubed. So we're going to start first converting the numerator. The denominator is not going to change. So we have so notice the centimeter cubed goes on the bottom. And in the first set of empty train tracks, we're going to go from gram to kilogram. So since gram is in the upper top left of the empty train track, it goes on the bottom in the conversion factor, and kilogram goes on top. Next, we're going to go from kilogram to pounds. So to the left of our empty train track, kilogram is on top. So in our conversion, it goes on the bottom, and pounds goes on top. So again, this is an intermediate step. So when we get our answer, we don't want to round. We want to keep 5, 6 significant figures at least in our answer. And so we get 5.28 e to the negative 3. Now with my calculator, it only gave me 0.00528. That's all the digits gave me. So that's why that's what I put in the answer. So this is pounds per centimeter cubed. So that's step one. Now, step two, we want to convert the denominator. So again, we're going to set up our train tracks. So we're going to use the number from step one and then convert the denominator. So we have 5.28 e to the negative 3 pounds centimeter cubed. Now, since we're converting the denominator, we got to think backwards. So in our empty train track to the left, centimeter cubed, which is the unit we want to convert, is on the bottom. So what we're going to do in our conversion factor from centimeter cubed to inch cubed, centimeter cubed will go on top. And inch cubed will go on the bottom. So it's kind of the opposite of when we were doing the numerator. The next step is we want to convert inch cubed to centimeter cubed, or excuse me, inch cubed to feet cubed. So in our empty train track, to the left of it, inch cubed is on the bottom. So in our conversion factor, it will go on top. And then foot cubed would go on the bottom. So notice here, we're only changing the denominator. The numerator is staying, the unit for numerator is staying constant. So the calculator gives us so this is what the calculator gives us, but again, we have to round to the correct number of significant figures. So we look at the numbers given to us in the problem. So 2.40 has 3 significant figures, 2.2 pounds and 1 kilogram, 2 significant figures, inch to centimeter is exact, foot to inch is exact. So our answer should be rounded to 2 significant figures. So after the 4 is a 9. So you can either say 150 pounds per foot cubed or 1.5 e to the 2 pounds per foot cubed. You cannot say 150 points. So if you put this as your answer, that's incorrect because it should only have 2 significant figures. So if you put that decimal point at the end, it would have 3. And that would be too many significant figures. So here we have Dash has a top speed of 250 feet per second. How long in hours will it take Dash to run from San Antonio to Chicago? And the distance between San Antonio to Chicago is 1,997 kilometers. And it gives us the conversion factor. 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. So what we're looking for in this problem is the time in hours it takes Dash to go from San Antonio to Chicago. What we're given is Dash's speed, which is 250 feet per second. And we're given the distance from San Antonio to Chicago, which is 1,997 kilometers. And again, there's many different ways you can go about solving this problem. I'm going to choose one way, but if you do it a different way, get the same answer, it's all good. So we're looking for the time in hours. We know the distance, we know the velocity, uh, and we know that if we have velocity, which is distance over time, so I'll use V for velocity, or let me just use, or speed, I guess is not velocity technically. Speed is distance divided by time. So if we're looking for time, it would be distance divided by speed. So that's how you can find the time it takes by taking the distance and dividing it by the speed. So using that kind of logic, we know that 250 feet per second. And we have 1997 kilometers. So what I want to do is I want to take this kilometers, if I can, and convert it into feet. Because if I can take kilometers and convert it into feet, I can find the time it takes dash to go from San Antonio to Chicago, at least in seconds. And so if we look here, what's given to us is 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. So that's from the metric to English system. So we can convert kilometers to miles. And then we got to ask ourselves, is there a way to convert miles to feet? And the answer is yes. We know how many feet are in a mile. We know that 1 mile, 5,280 feet. So once we convert kilometers to feet, the second step, we can define the time it takes in seconds for dash to go from San Antonio to Chicago. That's the distance divided by the speed. And then once we know the time in seconds, we'll convert it to time in hours because it's looking for the time in hours. And so to go from seconds to hours, we got to know the conversion. So how many seconds in an hour? 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. So these are the steps we're going to do to convert or to determine how many hours it'll take dash to run from San Antonio to Chicago. So step one, we want to convert kilometers to feet. Set up our train tracks. In our first empty set of train tracks, kilometers is in the top left. So going from kilometers to miles, kilometer goes on the bottom. Mile goes on top. Now we want to go from miles to feet. In our empty set of train tracks, mile is on the top left. So in our conversion, mile is on the bottom. Feet are on top. So here everything cancels but feet. And we get a big number. It's 6.553238 e to the 6 feet. So that's how many feet there are in 1997 kilometers. That's step one. Now that we know the distance in feet, we can calculate the time. So we take the distance divided by the speed, we get the time in seconds. So step two, time in seconds equals And this will give us how many seconds it takes. Let me write that here, 6. We get 26,212.95 seconds. So in step 2, we found out how many seconds it takes Dash to run from San Antonio to Chicago. And in the last step, we just need to convert seconds into hours. 26,212.95 seconds. Now in our empty train track, to the top left is seconds, so that goes on the bottom in our conversion, and hour goes on top. Oops. And we get 7.281375 hours. So we're not finished yet. We have to round to the correct number of significant figures. So in our original numbers, 250 feet per second. This has 3 significant figures, or excuse me, not 3, my bad. It has 2 because there's no decimal point at the end. 1997 has 4 significant figures, 1 mile, 1.609 kilometers. A mile is the English unit, kilometer is the metric. So this would have 4 significant figures. Now 1 mile, 5,280 feet. Feet and mile are both the English system. So it's exact. 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. Hour and second in the same system of measurement. This would also be exact. So our answer should be rounded to 2 significant figures. So after the 2 is an 8. And so this should be rounded to 7.3 hours. That's how long it'll take Dash to go from San Antonio to Chicago. So we had Dash on the previous problem. This problem, we have Superman, who's faster than a speeding bullet. On average, a bullet travels 1940 miles per hour. How long in hours will it take Superman to travel from San Antonio to Paris? And it tells us the distance is 8,300 kilometers between San Antonio to Paris. And it gives us 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. So again, we're looking for the time it takes for Superman to travel. We're given the speed. And from our previous problem, we know that speed is distance divided by time. And we can rearrange this to solve for time equals distance divided by speed. But before we can find the time, we need to make sure that the speed, in the speed, the unit for distance is the same as our unit for distance between San Antonio to Paris. So you see here we have 1940 miles per hour, and we have the distance between the 2 cities is kilometers. So either we need to convert kilometers to miles, or we need to convert mile per hour to kilometer per hour. Either way is fine, doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take kilometers and convert it to miles. And then from the miles, we can find the time in hours. Because we know the distance, we know the speed, we can find the time. And so we have a direct link between kilometers and miles. So we can do a quick conversion of the 2. So 8,300 kilometers. In our empty train track, to the top left, we have kilometers in our conversion. Kilometer goes on the bottom. Mile goes on top. And we get the number of miles between San Antonio and Paris. Again, this is an intermediate calculation, so we don't want to round until the very end. Now we want to find time in hours. Since our velocity is miles per hour and our distance is in miles, if we take the distance divided by speed, it will give us hours. And so when we work this out, we get 2.65 hours. So we get 2.6590 hours, but we're not finished. We have to round to the correct number of significant figures. We look at our original numbers. 1940 has 3 significant figures because there's no decimal point at the end of this trailing 0. 8,300 has 2 significant figures because, again, at the end of these trailing zeros, there's no decimal point. 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. Mile is in the English system. Kilometers in the metric system. So this is not exact. This has 4 significant figures. So since 2 is the least number, we're going to round this to 2 significant figures. So 2, 6, after the 6 is greater than 5. So this will be rounded to 2.7 hours. So that's how long it takes Superman to go from San Antonio to Paris. So here we're going to Middle Earth, dealing with the hobbits, and we have Bilbo Baggins' Shire property is 2.65 kilometers squared. He hires Frodo with his team of boars to cut the Shire meadows. Frodo charges 7.8 castor for every 50 acres. How much will it cost Bilbo to get the meadow cut? So here we have a multi-step problem. And so when you read all this, what we're looking for is the cost in castor, which is actually a currency in Middle Earth. So that's what we're looking for out of this problem. How much is it going to cost Bilbo to get his Shire property, the meadows, cut? And what we're given here is the area of his meadow in kilometers squared and how much it costs to cut every 50 acres. So this 7.8 castor every 50 acres, that's kind of like a conversion factor for us. So we can say 7.8 castor equals 50 acres. So we're looking for the cost. So the cost again is a castor. So that's going to be our final units. But we need to get from kilometers squared to castor. And so here we have kilometers squared. We need to get to castor. There's no direct conversion between kilometers squared and castor because there's no conversion factor given to us that directly links the two. But kilometers square, of course, is a unit of area. Now is CASTAR, we've got to ask ourselves the question, is CASTAR, is there a conversion to some unit of area? And acres is a unit of area. So if somehow we can find acres, we can convert it to CASTAR, because it tells us that for every so many acres, we have this cost this many CASTAR. So we have acres. So again, if we can find out the number of acres, we can get the cost that it's going to take costs for Bilbo Baggins. So now we got kilometers squared, which is given to us. It's a unit of area. Acres is a unit of area. Now we got to see there's no direct conversion given to us between kilometers squared and acres. If there was, we could do a direct conversion between kilometers squared and acres. But if we look at the other conversion factors given to us, 1 mile, 1.609 kilometers, 1 mile squared, 640 acres. And this is an exact conversion. So if we can find out how many kilometers squared are in a mile squared, then we can convert miles squared to acres. So this is the missing link in this problem. So we're going to go from kilometers squared to miles squared to acres. And again, the reason we want to go from kilometers squared to miles squared, if we look at our conversion factors, the link between kilometers and acres is the mile. But first, before we do this, again, we need to know how many kilometers squared in a mile squared. So we're going to have to square this unit or this conversion. So when we do that, one mile squared equals 2.58888. Oh. So now we have the relationship between miles squared and kilometers squared. So now we can set up our train track. Remember, we don't want to undercharge or overcharge Mr. Baggins. So we're starting with our kilometers squared, 2.65 kilometers squared. We want to convert this to miles squared. So in the train track, the empty train track to the left of us, we see the kilometers squared is in the top left. So in our conversion, kilometers squared is on the bottom. Miles squared is on top. So now we have miles squared, we want to convert to acres. So, and again, in our empty train track to the top left is miles squared. So in our conversion factor, it goes on the bottom. Acres go on top. So now we've converted miles squared into acres. Then lastly, we want to convert acres into CASTAR. And so here, and again, in our empty train track to the top left is acres. So the acres goes on the bottom. The CASTAR go on top. And so you see everything cancels except CASTAR. So we multiply what's on top, divide by what's on the bottom. And we get 102.1963 cast iron. But again, we're not finished. We got to round to the correct number of significant figures. So we look at our original numbers. 2.65 kilometers squared has 3 significant figures. 7.8 castar for every 50 acres. This has 2 significant figures. 50 acres has 1. 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. So this would have 4, because mile is English, kilometer is metric. 1 mile squared is exactly 640 acres. This is exact. So it should be rounded to 1 significant figure. After the 1 is a 0. And we get 100 castar. Now again, make sure you don't put a decimal point at the end, because if you do, that's 3 significant figures. With 1 significant figure, you just put the 1, 0, 0. Or you can write 1e to the 2 castar. So here we have Bilbo Baggins' kitchen is 15.5 feet by 7 feet. He hires Beaufort to retile his kitchen floor. Beaufort charges 52.3 castar for every 2.55 meters squared of floor. How much will it cost Bilbo to get his floor retiled? And we give you the conversion factor. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Again, there are multiple ways you can solve this problem. I'm going to do it one way. If you did it a different way, get the same answer. No problem. So here, what we're looking for again is the cost in castar. That's the overall objective of this problem, is how much will it cost in castar for Bilbo to retile his floor. And the link or the conversion we have with castar with another unit is that we know that 52.3 castar is the cost for every 2.55 meters squared. So Beaufort charges this much for every 2.55 meters squared of floor he has to retile. So if somehow we can find the area of Mr. Baggins' floor in meters squared, then we can convert meters squared into castar. So that's our link. Once we get to meters squared, we can get to castar. And so here we know that the dimensions of Bilbo Baggins' kitchen is 15.5 feet by 7 feet. So in step 1, I'm going to find feet squared, because if you take the length times the width, we can get the square footage of Mr. Baggins' kitchen. That's the first step I'm going to do, because again, I want to eventually get to the area in meters squared. So I find the area in feet squared. Now in the second step, using the conversion factors given to me, I got to go from feet squared to meters squared. Now again, based on the conversion factors given to me, the link between the English and metric system is 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So if I can go from feet squared to inches squared, then I can go to centimeters squared, because I have that conversion factor given to us. And then once I'm in centimeters squared, I can convert it to meters squared. And then ultimately, once we know meters squared, we can convert it to castar. So these are the steps I'm going to do to determine how much it will cost Bilbo to retile his kitchen. Now, before we begin, 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. These are not squared units. So we need to square those units. And when we do that, we get 1 inch squared, 6.416 centimeters squared. We also, since we want to go from feet squared to inches squared, we got to find how many inches squared in a foot squared. So 1 foot is 12 inches. So 1 foot squared, 144 inches squared. And then lastly, we need to know how many centimeters squared in a meter squared. So we know that 1 meter is 100 centimeters. If we square that, we get 1 meter squared, 10,000 centimeters squared. So these are all the conversions we're going to need. Now, first step, we want to find the area in feet squared. So that's just simply 15.5 times 7.0. And it comes out on the calculator 108.5 feet squared. That's all the digits that the calculator gave me. So that's step 1. We found the area in feet squared. Step 2 is we want to convert feet squared into meters squared. This is where we're going to need our train track. So we're starting with feet squared. And we want to convert feet squared to inches squared. So in our empty train track, to the top left is feet squared. So in our conversion, feet squared goes on the bottom, inches squared goes on top. Step 2, we want to go from inches squared to centimeters squared. In our empty train track, to the top left, inches squared is on top, so that goes on the bottom. And centimeters squared goes on top. Then lastly, we want to convert centimeters squared to meters squared. So in our empty train track, to the top left, centimeters squared is on top. It'll go on the bottom for our conversion. And meters squared will go on top. So when you work this out, we get 10.02436 meters squared. So that's how many meters squared we have in 108.5 feet squared. So that's step 2. Step 3, we want to convert meters squared into castor. So in our conversion, in our empty train track, to the top left is meters squared. So it goes on the bottom in our conversion. And castor go on top. So when we work this out, we get 205.5977 castor. But we're not finished yet. We got to round to the correct number of significant figures. So 15.5 feet has 3. 7.0 feet has 2. 52.3 has 3, 2.55 has 3, 1 inch, 2.54 centimeters is exact. So our answer should be rounded to 2 sig figs. 1, 2 after the 0 is greater than 5. So this should be 210 castar, or you can write 2.1 e to the 2 castar. Because again, the smallest number of significant figures is 7.0 feet, which has 2. So our answer should be rounded to 2 sig figs.